else I'd look have lived would envy what we get in Longview for the money.
Well, thank you.
There's always questions going to come up with the way certain things are handled, just like I can't imagine a $950,000 fire truck.
Right, I understand.
In our department at Lake of the Pines, we live on used equipment and volunteers, and we have to depend on a separate service for first responders and ambulance. But I just felt that it's a lot easier to complain than it is to commend, but I'm with you guys.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I was just curious if the city is considered going to defined contribution pension plans as opposed to defined benefit, because the private industry is pretty much completely made the switch, and so I don't know if you've looked at it or if any other cities in the state have considered that.
We have two pension plans. The question was, well, go ahead. The question was about our pension plans for city employees, whether they are a defined benefit or a defined contribution plan. And currently we have two plans. One is for the firefighters, and that was adopted back in, I don't know, the 1980s, the late 80s possibly. And so that the firefighters and emergency personnel, not the police department, but firefighters are on their own pension plan. And what they have is a defined benefit plan. They put in 14%, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 14% of their salary goes into their pension plan. They don't pay Social Security. They opted out of that in the the early 90s. They gave city governments the chance to opt out of Social Security if they wanted to. The fire department did here in Longview back then. So they put 14% of their salary in, and then the city matches it in this defined pension plan. Their plan is in fairly good shape. It's better than some, but they still are doing some work on it. They have voluntarily reduced some of their benefits and looking to reduce some others to really get that plan in the shape it needs to be. The majority of the city workers are in the statewide plan, and it's called the Texas Municipal Retirement System, and it's a statewide plan all over the state of Texas, and most cities employees are in that plan. It's a very good retirement plan. The city workers are required to put 7% of their salaries right off the top go into the state pension plan, and then the city matches that 2-for-1. So it's a very good plan for the employees. Now they have to be here. You have to have 20 years of service and age and those type of things that most pension plans do. About 3 or 4 years ago, during the downturn, this Texas Municipal Retirement System, it's much like the teacher's retirement, kind of the same idea, but it's kind of what I've been told, kind of a hybrid plan, partly defined benefits, but partly defined contribution, and sort of a hybrid. But the state legislature governs that plan, and they made, for a while, they could only invest in very just basically cash type securities and bonds, and they could not get the return that they need in the downturn. Really lost quite a bit. But the legislature changed that 2 or 3, 4 years ago maybe, and TMRS, I believe, Sean helped me with this, but they're 90% funded statewide, and so that's I don't think you can find many plans in the United States that can say that. So anyway, the legislature made some changes in that to get that on more solid footing. Yes, sir.
David, I just wanted to thank you for coming out tonight.
Sorry.
I want to thank you for coming out tonight and explaining how the city budget is run and taking our comments and feedback. And I know you're a busy man, so your time is very valuable. Just first of all, thank you for that.
Thanks.
I want to say I appreciate also having someone knowledgeable and experienced like you leading the city government. That's very reassuring to us. And the question I have tonight is, I looked at the charts you gave us, and it looks like a huge part of the budget is in the fire and police. And I also noticed in your slide presentation that in about the last 10 or 15 years, you've seen a tripling in demands on those services, but the population of Longview hasn't increased at the same rate. So obviously, the same number of people are using the services more and more. So has the city looked at the root cause of the increase in the demands of the services, and have they looked at ways to address the root causes so to reduce the demands on the city services, for example, in crime prevention or in fire safety and maybe even health-related things, because obviously there's some opportunities here for education and prevention. I wonder what the city's doing looking at that.
Right. Well, our fire calls, for instance, with, you know, the building codes that we have and the enforcement that we try to do on the building codes, we really, you know, as far as time constraints, don't do a lot of firefighting anymore, because over the years building codes have gotten better and using better materials and things like that. But where we've seen the huge increase is in the EMS part. And I think some of that's a function of the age, the demographics in the community. And I'm sure, well, you know, just the other concerns, the health concerns that we have in America. We're, I guess, not a real healthy nation in a lot of respects. So as far as that kind of an increase in demand for services, you know, I don't know that we've ever really looked for root causes of that. We just try to answer the calls when they come in and make sure that we're ready to respond, you know, when they do come in. Public safety, or on the police side, we've done a lot of things like community policing. We have PAR officers in the city divided up, and I think our crime statistics are you know, manageable, and where they, you know, of course any crime's too much, but we do have an increase in calls, and you know, I don't know if that's a result of a more violent society. I'm sure that has something to do with it as well. Single families, all the social issues that we all struggle with and read about, I'm sure contribute to that as well. But there has been a demand for increased services. Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot of hypochondriacs in Longview too that just call the ambulance. Just, you know, just to be real honest about it, you get a lot of calls that, you know, right. Absolutely, yeah. And that's part of this long-range planning thing, the exercise we're trying to go through to what are we going to look like in the next 20 years? You know, not just do I have a pothole out here today, but what do we need to plan for and be ready for in the next 20 years? And our changing demographics is one of those issues. Yes, ma'am?
My house was paid for over 25 years, yet I still had to pay property taxes. And I am wondering if somebody at the age 65 or 70 that's lived in their home for over 40 years, why they still have to pay property taxes. Couldn't there be some kind of exemption or a lowering of those taxes? I finally sold my house and bought a trailer so that I could move whenever the property tax went up.
Well, we do have a local exemption for 65 or over. How many of you, I'm not going to ask you your age, but we do have an exemption on the values are frozen when a person turns 65. So the value does freeze, and so we do have that exemption available for people that, well, that would take a vote of the, yeah, it could be done, yes, to answer your question. The city council would have to approve that, and I don't know if the voters would have to approve that or not. I don't know if the council could just do that on their own. Boy, I don't know about that. I've never heard that before.
David?
Yes, sir.
I've got a couple of questions. The first one relates to the planning commission that you set up, the 10 to 20-year plan. Have you reflected on the conversation you and I had about a year ago now regarding United Nations Agenda 21? Because a planning structure like that is ripe red meat for these guys if they hear about it. And you need to be aware of that and set up a sort of filtration system so that any non-government organizations that come in and talk with you are not backed by Agenda 21.
Right.
Because they will really mess up your plans. And they put a tremendous amount of pressure on you in very subtle ways to make things move in the direction of that agenda.
Right.
So,
well, what we're really looking at are parks. You know, what are we going to do with our park system? These are basic core services the city provides: transportation, water, sewer, roadways, public safety, those types of things.
those are all vulnerable to that
Yeah.
agenda.
Right.
So if you haven't thought about it in that context, I think you ought to put your antenna up.
Okay.
The second question was regarding the city's debt. Do you know what the total city debt is?
I think it is $70 million. Is that right, Sean? Yeah, we have a large portion of that in revenue bonds, that water and sewer revenue bonded indebtedness. You know, when you go and build a water treatment plant, the last big bond issue we had was about $30 million, something like that, back, 15 years ago. So we do that. We're paying off those bonds, and water and sewer rates cover those. But I think the last I looked, we had about, in total debt, the street bonds and all the revenue bonds that we have for water and sewer projects, I think are right around $70 million.
Last question right here.
Okay.
I was thinking, earlier you was talking about firemen. I'm a retired fire chief in Houston, 37 years.
Uh-huh.
And you're talking about that pension,
Yes, sir.
and you're saying that the fireman was paying 14%. Well, also I think as you go up in rank, you pay more. The fireman has to pay more to support that pension. I don't know if you said that a while ago or not.
No, sir. It's just like whatever their salary is from your entry up to the chief, they pay 14% of whatever that is and goes into their pension. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Let's give them a hand. Sheriff, if you have any additional questions, David Willard and Sean will be hanging around just a little bit to visit with you. Remember our donation boxes on your way out, if you could, please, and we'll see you again next month. Thank you.